Hello, and welcome to the third quarter 2020 investment update for the Community Foundation for the Fox Valley region. I'm Alan Lenahan, CIO at FEG and lead advisor on the foundation portfolio, and I'm joined by Catherine Maurer. Today we're going to take you through an update on markets and the portfolio. In the third quarter, we saw continued strength in global equity markets off of March lows, with the MSCI All Country World returning 8.1% in the quarter. Now, September was a weak month, and as we're recording this, we're into early November. October was also negative for equity markets globally, so a softening in that positive momentum we've seen off of the COVID economy lows in March. However, we've also rallied dramatically into and through election day, the market seemingly being very positive about the likelihood of a divided government as well as plans for fiscal stimulus. In the third quarter, the fixed income market had a solid 0.6% return as interest rates settled at near all-time lows. The real asset market was up 1%, and the hedge fund market had a return of about 2.7%. Modest return in between equity and fixed income, where oftentimes it lies. If you look back to the third quarter and look at some of the underlying themes, we saw a continuation of one trend and a reversal of another. The Russell 1000 growth, so think about tech stocks. Tech stocks were up 13.2% on the quarter. Again, leading from a sector perspective, equity markets, and dramatically outperforming value stocks measured by the Russell 1000 value on the far right of this chart, up only 5.6% during the quarter. That continues a long stretch of growth outperforming value, led largely by the biggest of the tech names, the FANGs, plus a couple that have led market returns for the better part of the decade. A reversal of trend, however, we see in emerging markets. So from a regional standpoint, emerging markets actually led domestic and non-US developed equity markets with a return of 9.6% during the quarter. And we've seen continued strength after the third quarter in emerging markets relative to other regions. Meanwhile, developed Europe, developed Asia has struggled a little bit, only up 4.8% on the quarter and really just about flat over the one-year period. Going forward, we expect markets to continue to key off of some of the dominant themes that we've experienced throughout 2020, the COVID economy, fiscal stimulus, monetary policy, as well as now the potential for a change in the tax regime.
The Community Foundation had strong performance during the second quarter, driven primarily from the strength of global equities. Returns for the endowment were 6.1%, ahead of the 5.8% benchmark, whereas the long-term portfolio was at 5.9%, about aligned with the benchmark. As we would expect, the intermediate-term portfolio, which is more bonds than equity, had lower returns of 3.5%, but still absolute positive returns for the quarter. And the short-term portfolio returns were less than 1% given the current low yield environment. As you look a little more closely at the endowment, within global equities, the foundation has less exposure to those large technology or FANG stocks that Alan was mentioning, and that did cost a bit of performance. However, other areas of the portfolio did quite well and offset that, and those include exposure to emerging markets. The portfolio has a slightly higher exposure to emerging markets than the benchmark does. And also the portfolio has more exposure to credit-oriented strategies within fixed income, which did quite well this quarter. Additionally, we were pleased to see that the active global real estate manager we added to the portfolio in April has done a really nice job navigating a very tough space with positive absolute returns for the quarter. But as you look longer term and you look at the past year, there is still some relative underperformance for the endowment versus the benchmark. We're keenly aware of that and continue to make changes to the portfolio to help narrow that gap.
Thanks, Catherine. So coming off a pretty good quarter, we want to make sure the portfolio is positioned well for the future. And in September, we added a position to gold. specifically the First Eagle Gold Fund, which is a combination of bullion as well as gold miner stocks. It's a small holding within the real asset portfolio, but we think adds a lot of value to a diversified real asset portfolio. Specifically, gold performs well in times of economic and political uncertainty, low interest rate environments, especially falling rate environments, performs well when we're in a period of high budget deficits and expansive monetary policy, and performs well as a store of value relative to the US dollar when you see the type of fiscal and monetary stimulus that we have seen thus far in 2020 and expect going forward.
As Alan demonstrated through his discussion on gold and data warehouses, we are constantly thinking of ways we can contribute to positive returns for the portfolio. When we held our first introductory presentation earlier this year, we spoke to a few aspects of our portfolio that could be advantageous. One of those is our scale, which at 70 billion assets is considered quite large for investment advisory firms. And then the other is our nimbleness as OCIO. So to give you an idea of the talent our scale can bring to the portfolio, we wanted to highlight a recent addition, GVV. GVV is a venture capital strategy with whom FEG has a long working relationship with. It's led by portfolio manager Jenny Lee. Ms. Lee was recently featured on the Forbes Midas list for the world's best venture capital investors in 2020. An excerpt of this is captured here. Late October, we received notice that GVV's most recent funds were oversubscribed, but because of our working relationship, we were granted an allocation, which was great news, but it had a catch. We needed to provide same-day affirmation for any investors moving into that strategy. Because we're acting as the Community Foundation's OCIO, we were able to make a decision in hours that typically takes days or even weeks to secure an investment. Hopefully, this brief presentation gave you a better idea as to what's going on in the markets, how the portfolios are doing for the Community Foundation, and what types of things FEG is doing to bring value to the portfolio. Thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to discussing this again next quarter.